I used to think silence was just the absence of sound. Turns out, silence can hum, especially when she's in the room. The first time I met her, I was fixing a coffee grinder at the small cafe near the bus terminal. Tuesdays were always quiet there, just the faint buzz of the refrigerator and the smell of burnt espresso lingering in the air. I liked it that way. I could work without having to talk. But that morning, someone new walked in, someone who didn't belong to the routine hum of my days. She came in like she was just passing through, but everything about her said otherwise. The way she took off her sunglasses slowly, the way her eyes scanned the place as if testing its honesty. Mid-40s, maybe. Neat hair, no jewelry, sharp lines softened by something tired. She didn't order right away, just stood there, looking at the chalkboard menu as if the choices were asking her something personal. Machines acting up again? I asked, because that's what I do when silence starts to feel too close. She glanced over her shoulder. Her voice came low, calm, measured. I think it's the grinder. It sounds like it's chewing itself. That was it, the first spark. Not a laugh, not a look. Just the way she said chewing itself, like she cared about words enough to make them mean more than they should. I got to work. My hands smelled like coffee, oil, and metal. She stayed close, pretending to scroll through her phone, but watching what I was doing. When I asked for the socket wrench, she passed it before I even looked up. That's when I noticed her hand. Clean nails, faint scar near the thumb, no ring. You know your tools, I said. I used to, she replied. No follow-up. No explanation. Just enough to make me wonder used to when. A pause. The air conditioner kicked on and blew a strand of her hair across her cheek. She didn't move to fix it. I'll need to test the grinder, I said. Go ahead. She smiled faintly, like she knew what I was really saying, that I wanted her to stay a little longer. The machine whirred back to life, rough at first, then steady. She watched the coffee pour, slow and dark, the sound filling the room again. I handed her a cup, even though she hadn't ordered one. On the house. Is this your way of flirting? She asked, one eyebrow raised. I nearly dropped the wrench. No, just making sure it works. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, more like a secret she didn't plan to share. Then I'll make sure it does. She took a sip. The moment stretched. The grinder clicked off. The silence returned, but this time it didn't hum. It throbbed. Before she left, she said, "You shouldn't give free coffee to strangers." Then maybe you shouldn't be one, I said. Too fast, too careless. That earned me the first real look. Direct, steady, just shy of dangerous. She tilted her head, almost smiling again. Careful, kid. Don't love me. I don't know why I said what I did next. Maybe it was the coffee, maybe it was the hum. Then don't breathe around me. She stopped in the doorway. For a moment, I thought she'd laugh. She didn't. She just looked at me like she'd heard that line before, in another life. Then she left, the bell above the door breaking the silence I didn't know I'd been holding. That was 3 days ago. The coffee grinder still works fine. But every time it starts up, I swear I hear her voice in the sound. Low, calm, and warning me again. Don't love me. And I still don't know if I already have. She came back on a Thursday. Same cafe. Same hum. Different air. This time she wasn't wearing sunglasses. She carried a paper folder tucked under one arm and looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was tied back, too tight, like she needed something to hold her together. Grinder's fine, I said, trying not to sound too relieved. Good to know. She smiled faintly. I didn't come for that. She glanced around, found a quiet table in the corner, and sat down. Papers spread across the table, diagrams, receipts, handwritten notes. She looked like someone trying to organize a life that no longer fit into straight lines. After a few minutes, I walked over with 2 mugs. You look like you could use this, I said. She didn't look up right away. You're observant. Occupational hazard. Finally, she met my eyes. There was something in them I hadn't seen before, not sharpness this time, but exhaustion hiding behind precision. You don't even know what I do, she said. I don't need to. People who stare that hard at paper are usually trying not to think about something else. She huffed out a breath that might have been a laugh. And what are you avoiding? You. That got her attention. She sat back, mug halfway to her lips. You're too young to say things like that. Probably, I said, smiling. But you're too smart to pretend you didn't want to hear it. She stared at me for a long moment, and in that silence I noticed everything else. Her right hand trembling slightly as she steadied the cup, the small gold earring she kept adjusting, the faint lines around her mouth that deepened when she almost smiled but didn't. "Do you ever get tired of being bold?" she asked. "Only when it doesn't work." She looked down at her papers again. The tension eased a little, but not enough. "You shouldn't say things like that to people like me." "What kind of people?" "Ones who already know better." The way she said it wasn't sharp. It was soft, too soft, like she'd just admitted something she wasn't supposed to. Her guard slipped, just for a heartbeat. "Doesn't mean you want to know better," I said quietly. That did it. Her jaw tightened. She pushed the papers back into the folder. "You really shouldn't," she began, then stopped herself. The rest of the sentence stayed between us, hanging in the air, heavier than words should be. I wanted to say something, anything, to break it, but I didn't. Instead, I watched her fingers as she gathered her things. The veins along her hand were faintly visible, her nails chipped. She paused midway, palm flat against the table as if remembering where she was. "Thanks for the coffee," she said. Her voice trembled, just a little. "You really shouldn't be this kind. Maybe I'm just bad at listening." She looked up again, tired, beautiful, trying not to be either. "That's dangerous," she murmured. And before she turned to leave, she brushed past my arm. Barely, accidentally, but it was enough. The warmth stayed longer than she did. The rain started before closing time, soft at first, then relentless, a steady percussion against the cafe windows. I was locking up when she came back, hair damp, coat clinging to her shoulders. "Caught in it?" I asked. She nodded, brushing rain from her sleeves. "Car wouldn't start. I remembered this place stays open late." "It doesn't," I said. "But I was here." That earned me a quiet look, the kind that carries both gratitude and warning. "Then I guess I'm lucky." I made her tea instead of coffee. She sat near the counter, both hands wrapped around the cup as if to steal its warmth. The storm outside turned the world into blur and sound. We were the only still things left in it. After a while, she started talking, not about herself, exactly, but close. "I used to live near the coast," she said. "I missed the smell of salt and rain." "Why'd you leave?" "Because I loved it too much," she said. Then, realizing how that sounded, she smiled weakly. "And things you love that much, they stop feeling safe." I wanted to ask who made her think that, but I didn't. Instead, I leaned against the counter, arms folded, pretending to study the rain. Her phone buzzed on the table. She looked at the screen and froze. The color drained from her face, and she turned it over without answering. "Bad news?" I asked. She shook her head too quickly. "Just old news." The room felt smaller. She tried to shift the topic, asked about my repairs, my work, but her voice was too even, too controlled. Every now and then her hand went toward the phone again, then stopped short, like she was afraid it might bite. I reached for a towel to dry her coat where it hung near the heater. "You can stay until the rain lets up," I said. "No rush." She looked up. "You always offer help like this?" "Only to people who refuse it." Her eyes softened then, that half-second of surrender she never let last. "You shouldn't look at me that way," she said. "I'm not looking at you anyway." I lied. "Yes, you are." The sound of thunder filled the gap between us. She stood, crossed the floor to where I was. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel it might happen. Her perfume, faint, woody, mixed with the smell of rain-soaked air. She hesitated, one hand lifting slightly, as if she meant to fix my collar or maybe stop herself from doing it. Then her phone buzzed again, louder this time. The spell broke. She stepped back. "I should go," she said quietly. "You could wait until it stops." "It won't." She reached for her coat, fingers trembling just enough for me to notice. I wanted to take her hand, just to steady it, not out of boldness, but out of something I couldn't name. Instead, I handed her the towel. Our fingers brushed, brief, electric, wrong. "Thank you," she whispered. "You make things complicated." I almost said, "So do you?" But I didn't. The door opened. Rain swept in. She disappeared into it, leaving the air heavy with all the words we didn't say. It had been a week since the storm. I told myself I wouldn't see her again. That felt easier than admitting I wanted to. But Friday night, there she was, sitting in the same corner of the cafe, her coat folded neatly beside her, a half-drunk cup of black coffee gone cold. She looked like someone waiting for news that never came. "Didn't think you'd come back?" I said quietly. She didn't look up right away. Neither did I. I sat across from her. The air felt heavier than before, like the walls had learned our history. "I shouldn't keep showing up here," she said finally. "Then why do you?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She leaned back, staring past me, eyes unfocused. "Because it's quiet here, and you don't ask questions I can't answer." "I could," I said. "I know." She smiled faintly. "That's why I come back." The silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. It had texture now, sharp at the edges, soft in the middle. I wanted to reach for her hand, but she had it curled around her coffee mug, thumb tracing the rim, slow, nervous. "I've been thinking," I said, "about that night. The rain. You didn't have to come here. I didn't know where else to go. Doesn't that mean something?" Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. "Don't make it mean something. I'm not. I stopped, because I didn't know how to finish." She looked at me then, really looked. "You're kind. And I'm not in a place where that's good for me." The words hung in the air, careful, deliberate, almost whispered. I tried to find something clever to say, something that might keep her from leaving again, but my throat felt dry. "You think I want something from you," I said finally. "I don't. I just like the way you talk. The way you stop halfway through a thought like you're trying to save it." Her expression softened, not into a smile, but into something closer to grief. "You shouldn't notice things like that. Then stop doing them," I said. That broke her composure. Her hand went to her forehead, and she laughed once, small, helpless, almost bitter. "God, you sound so young. And you sound like someone trying not to feel anything." She froze. The laugh died. Her hand lowered slowly. "You think you understand what this is?" "I don't," I said honestly. "But neither do you." That landed between us like a confession. We both looked away. The clock above the counter ticked too loudly. Finally, she whispered, "What are we doing?" "I don't know." Her gaze lingered on me, unreadable. Then she said, softer this time, "You remind me of everything I used to want, and everything I can't have anymore." She stood up. Her chair scraped the floor, harsh and final. "Then tell me to stop," I said. She paused, one hand on the back of the chair, eyes shimmering in the low light. "If I tell you that," she said, voice trembling, "I don't think you will." And she left before I could prove her right. She didn't come for 2 weeks. I told myself I'd stop checking the door every time it opened, but the lie didn't even make it halfway to convincing. Then one night, as I was closing up, I saw her standing outside, not coming in, just watching through the window like someone unsure whether they still belonged. The streetlight behind her blurred in the rain. When I opened the door, she smiled faintly, as if apologizing for something she hadn't said yet. "You're still here." "Always am." She stepped inside, wet shoes squeaking on the tile. Her face looked paler than before, her eyes heavier. She carried a small envelope, folded at the edges from being held too long. "I shouldn't have come," she said. "But I didn't know who else to." She stopped, swallowed hard, and handed me the envelope. "Can you fix this?" It wasn't a machine this time. Inside was a photograph, old, worn, creased down the middle. A man stood in the picture, maybe mid-30s, next to her. He had the same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. I stared at it too long. She watched my reaction, her hands tight in front of her. "He was my brother," I said quietly. She nodded once. "I know." The air thinned. The cafe suddenly felt too small, the lights too bright. "I didn't realize," I whispered. You knew who I was?" "Not at first," she said. "Then one day you laughed, and it was him. The way you tilt your head, your hands when you talk." She shook her head, biting back something. I tried to stay away. The photograph trembled in my hand. "You were together?" "Once," she said. "Before he left. Before the accident." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She wasn't the type to. "He loved coffee," she added, like it was the safest sentence she could manage. I set the photo down gently, afraid it might crumble. You could have told me. I didn't know how. It wasn't supposed to matter. Then it started to. We stood there, both breathing too quietly. Somewhere outside, a bus passed, the low rumble filling the space between us. He would have liked that you fixed things, she said after a while. He was always breaking them. Guess it runs in the family. That made her smile. Small, tired, genuine. For the first time, I saw her walls not just lowered, but gone. Beneath everything, the caution, the restraint, there was grief that hadn't learned how to die. I thought seeing you would hurt, she said. But it doesn't. It just confuses me. Confuses me too. Her hand brushed the photo once more before pulling away. He would have told you to stop staying up this late, she murmured. I wanted to reach for her then, not out of want, but out of something deeper, older. But she stepped back, shaking her head gently. Keep it, she said. Maybe it's time it stayed with someone who can still fix things. When she left, the bell above the door barely made a sound. I looked at the photograph again. Her, younger, smiling, standing beside the brother I'd lost. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't a stranger who'd wandered into my life. She was the echo of someone I never got to say goodbye to. She came back in the morning this time. No rain, no storm, just light creeping through the front windows of the cafe and dust swirling in it like tiny secrets. I'd been half expecting her, half dreading it. After that night, the photograph, the silence that followed, I didn't know what was left to say. She stood in the doorway for a moment, holding her coat in her arms, not wearing it. You open early now? Couldn't sleep. Me neither. She crossed to the counter and sat on the stool she always chose, third from the end, near the window, but not too close. I poured her a coffee without asking. She didn't stop me. We didn't talk for a while. Just the sound of the cup against the saucer, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the city still half asleep outside. It wasn't an awkward silence anymore. It was one that had earned the right to stay. Finally, she said, I kept thinking about what you said. That night. Which part? That neither of us knows what this is. She smiled softly. You were right. I don't want to be. She looked down at her coffee. He was gone long before the accident, you know. Not physically, just distant. I think I spent years missing him even when he was still here. Maybe that's why I couldn't stay away from you. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. It wasn't about replacing him, she went on. It's just, when you talk, it feels like hearing him again, only gentler. Less afraid of being alive. I didn't mean to remind you of him. I know. She looked up. That's what makes it harder. The light shifted, sliding across her face, catching the faint lines around her eyes, the kind that come from both laughter and loss. I wanted to say something that mattered, but all that came out was, you don't have to keep apologizing for being here. She smiled then, small but real. You don't have to keep forgiving me, either. We stayed like that, both leaning on the counter from opposite sides, not touching but close enough to feel the pull. I reached out, not all the way, just enough that my fingers brushed hers where they rested on the saucer. She didn't move them away. Do you ever think, I said quietly, that maybe some people aren't meant to stay, just to remind us we're still capable of feeling something real? She nodded slowly. Maybe that's what we are. The silence after that was different, not charged, not restrained. Just steady, honest. Outside, the city started to wake. A bus hissed past. Someone laughed down the street. The world kept going, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. She stood up, left some bills on the counter, then hesitated. You'll keep the photo? Yeah. Good, she whispered. Then, almost without thinking, she reached out and touched my cheek. Just once, brief as a heartbeat. No promises, no explanations. Just the quiet collapse of everything we'd been holding back. When she left, the door swung shut behind her, soft, final, and somehow tender. And for the first time, I didn't try to follow. It's been 6 months. The cafe still smells like burnt espresso in the mornings, and the grinder still hums when I turn it on. That same low sound that started all of this. Some days, I catch myself listening for her voice under it. Not because I expect it, but because a part of me still wants to. She didn't come back after that morning. No call, no note. Just absence, clean and honest. The kind that doesn't hurt as much as it reminds. But she left something behind without meaning to. It wasn't the photo. That's still tucked under the counter, between receipts and loose screws. It was quieter than that. She left a version of myself I didn't know I could be. One that listens longer, waits before speaking, pays attention to the way people look away when they're trying not to break. That's her legacy, I think. Teaching without trying to. I learned that love, or whatever this was, doesn't always arrive to stay. Sometimes it just stops by to show you that your heart still works. That it can still ache, still soften, still misread a silence and hope it means something. People come into your life like rain, uninvited, necessary, leaving everything different once they're gone. She was like that. A quiet storm that never raised her voice, but still rearranged the air. I used to think love had to end with answers, a confession, a kiss, a promise. But what we had never asked for any of that. It just wanted to exist. For a handful of moments, it did. And that was enough. Sometimes, before closing, I brew 2 cups instead of 1. One sits across from me until it goes cold. It's not longing anymore, just gratitude disguised as habit. I imagine her somewhere else, in another quiet cafe, fixing her own silence the way I fix machines. Maybe she thinks of me once in a while. Maybe not. Either way, she changed the way I see things. Now, when someone walks in, tired, guarded, pretending they only came for coffee, I look a little closer. I listen to the pauses. I wonder what they're not saying. And sometimes, I catch myself smiling, because I remember a woman who once told me not to love her, and how I never really did. Not the way she feared. I just saw her, when she couldn't see herself. And that's its own kind of love, I guess. The quiet kind. The kind that stays long after the door closes. So, if you've ever had someone like that, someone who arrived, rearranged your silence, and left you a little more human, tell me, what did they teach you before they walked away? Because sometimes, that's the story worth remembering. Not who stayed, but who showed you what it meant to feel again.